Hello, Deep Mindfulness Collective. This right here, right now, is the joy of being a live stream coming to you live from Brooklyn, New York. Very happy to be here with you. Good times for all. So, folks, as we begin to trickle in, what is up? Where are you at? What are you grateful for? BK, grateful for. I like keeping my spelling mistakes in there because I type so fast sometimes and I just don't. Well, I spelled grateful like the wrong way, the comedy way. Yeah, what on earth are you grateful for? What is going on, folks? How is everybody doing? How is life? How goes it all? Yeah, what's going on, folks? Where are you? And what, may I ask, is the thing you're grateful for? Excited for today, excited to jump in and do a little meditation. Let's see, Jess, BKK, in Switzerland, grateful for family and health. Glad you're here. Thank you for joining. Denny, and P.S., I just want you to know I'm very much not ignoring you. Thank you for sending the email. I am very much looking forward to get back to you very soon. It has just been monstrously busy. So thank you for your patience. Denny says, coming from Harlem for the Insight Timer app, wouldn't have such grateful for the Insight Timer app, wouldn't have such consistent practice without it. Excellent. That is good to know. Glad to hear that works. How have I been? I've been pretty good. A lot's been going on. A lot of happening all at once. So it's been good. It's been pretty well. Things have been going pretty good. I'll give like a more serious update. You know, I just realized saying that I never have given my last update from my most recent psychedelic experience. I got to do that. Okay. Because what I do is I go over the entire recording, which is like, the thing was 8 hours long. P.S. Only about 3 or 4 hours of that was I speaking, and so I have to go over that and like kind of go through and find the bullet points. It's always really helpful for me to see it. I'm like, wow, it's really powerful for me to look back on that. Excuse me. Hello from Vienna, Julia. Vienna, Austria. Grateful for Shinzen and his teachings. As am I. Second, that Shinzen point. Lovely. Third. Excellent. Morning from Brooklyn. Grateful for a friend who helped me move a piece of furniture. Some pieces of furniture are just too big for one person. It's so funny how I realize how much furniture is really based on like such weird things. Anyway, the thing I'm talking about is the couches that we have here. I want to you guys have seen our couches, right? Anyway, these big couches that we got as a gift. We got them and then tried to move them into our apartment, took the legs off, everything, and it was like, you couldn't fit a piece of paper between the couch and the door. Like, came so close to scraping both of them, and I was like, we just got it in. And I was like, our door is actually extra large. Our door is like very wide because I do big projects in here, so I want to bring big carts and stuff out in and out and all this stuff, and anyway. Furniture. Folks, excited for today, excited to do a little meditation with you. And I'm also, P.S., as always, open to, some degree of request. I have some things in mind, but I also want to find out from you what on earth is of interest. What's going on? What do we want to focus on? And if you're new here, if you're new to this process, you know what happened, right? We created that wall, the emoji wall, and I think it just died. I don't even know what happened. I don't know what the change was. This should float across the screen, but it doesn't. Why is that not happening? I don't know. That just went away suddenly. Hey. Shut down source when not visible, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what happened, but that was fun. I was going to say, if you were new here, welcome. Let us know. It reminded me of the emoji wall because we spam people with emojis when they're new. So let's see. Jess says, slowly jumping back into meditation after a few weeks. Okay, so getting back into meditation. I'm trying to think of as far as specifically what type of meditation and what kinds of things we want to explore. I have one idea that I am interested in, but I also want to, okay, yeah. Okay, so I think I have a good sense of what I want to do, so we might just, meditate, exactly. I found a fountain labeled, Fountain of Youth in the park, but there was no water in it. Exactly. So we'll have to reach the wellspring within. Exactly. Well, the wellspring within is actually pretty close to what I'm thinking about doing. So a friend of mine, Michael Taft, talks about this concept, which I think is like, in a way, a sort of generic concept that you've heard of before, this idea of wellness. But when we look at this idea of wellness and well-being, I think well-being might be a nicer term just because it's not so totally co-opted. Well-being, that there are aspects of our experience at any given time that are relatively good, relatively okay. They're maybe peaceful or quiet or spacious or equanimous, or these kind of things. So what we're going to be doing is attending to those sensations, attending to those aspects of our experience. So in this current moment now, you can detect that you're probably, if you're able to even watch a live stream or make jokes about, fountains of youth or whatever, your system is not dramatically in stress. It is relatively neutral, relatively, okay. So part of what we're going to be doing is just attending to the part of our experience that is effectively fundamentally okay, fundamentally stable, fundamentally in good shape. And we'll be guiding a meditation along those lines. And we're just going to be, in this way, cultivating well-being. And this is, this relates to, well, generally this is a kind of shamatha practice and or a kind of concentration practice, but we're not focused on any particular object necessarily. Now, if we focus on an object, which we will at the beginning, we can, and I'll see if this makes sense to do, but we can focus on the well-being contained within that object experience. We don't have to, but we can. So if we suddenly notice the sensations in our hand, we can notice, oh, the sensations in my hand are quiet, which they're monstrously quiet. They have no sound whatsoever. So the sensations in my hand are quiet, and let's hang out with the quietness of that, or let's hang out with the calmness or agitated quality there. Now, sometimes what happens is when we focus on one thing, the mind will show us the opposite. So just notice that if the mind keeps getting drawn to the opposite thing, that's fine. You could notice what is noticing that it's agitated. That part of the mind is often very calm. It has to be in order to notice something. And then one other thing. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out a way to teach this very clearly and simply for folks, which is the process, the meditation that we've talked about before is this and not this. Now I want to just emphasize here, I'm going to give you the instructions ahead of time, which I usually hesitate to, but I'm trying to get clarity on how I want to teach this. So this is my new formula for teaching samadhi or balancing of mind. So basically we're going to pick one object, one sensation, set of sensations, right? So maybe the sensations in the hands or the breath, etc. And when we detect that sensation very clearly, distinctly, we're going to call that this. This. And each time we use that word, we can't use that word superficially. We can't just be like this. We want to use it very, very specifically. We mean this sensation in this precise moment. So the definition is very important. Eventually, what we're going to do is, no matter what the distraction is that arises, anything that is not this, we're just going to have it a simple term for that. We're going to call it not this. So whatever is arising that isn't this, we just call it not this. Now, here again, we can't use this word generically. We can't use this word, it's not this, not this. It's not something very specific. And so each time we use the word this in this meditation, it's not something, it's not, what is it? It's not this. So each time that word this comes up, means we're actually in contact with, I think that's a good way to say it. Don't use the label in your mind unless you're in contact with this, because the definition of this changes every moment, because it's this sensation in this moment. Okay, so hopefully that was clear. I'm trying to get clearer with that description because I'm going to be using that guided meditation quite a bit. So finding a nice comfortable position that you can maintain for the duration of the sit. I'm going to encourage folks to sit in almost complete stillness. If you can, stay completely still throughout the entire sit, no adjusting whatsoever. But, not always possible. Totally okay. If you need to adjust, do so very mindfully, so much that you don't lose the object of meditation. If you need to move very slowly, that's fine. Or the other reason you can break stillness is if you are getting a little bit overwhelmed. Feel free to either adjust a little bit or adjust a lot, or even stop the meditation. You do not want to overwhelm the system, which can happen sometimes. So finding that nice comfortable position. And when you're ready, we will begin. Beginning by taking a few comfortable deep breaths and just feeling the body rise and fall. Our central task in this meditation is going to be to treat this set of sensations as significant, worth attending to. The mind is very efficient, or one might say a little lazy at times. Once it detects something, it says, yeah, I got it. It moves on, wanders away. So our job is to be interested in these particular sensations. So as we notice the body rising and falling with the breath, attending to the sensations in such a way that would calm the nervous system. What would slow observing be like? Really soaking into how deeply original and unique these sensations are. And physically relaxing the body. Relaxing the major muscle groups in the body. Relaxing the head and the shoulders, the arms and hands, the chest, belly, lower back, relaxing the hips, the legs, and relaxing the feet. And recognizing that we can physically relax the body more than we can physically feel. So even if the body already feels relaxed, relaxing more than you can even physically detect, all the way down to the level of the bone. Down to the fascial tissue where the bone and muscle meet and attach. As if you let go deeply enough, the muscles themselves would float away. And so we're going to play a very simple game. In fact, the challenge of the game is its simplicity. I'd like you to find some simple sensation that you can easily detect. So perhaps the sensations of one of the hands, or if we like, we can use both hands. We can use the breath, something that's easy to access, consistently available. If we can't detect the breath, we can let one hand rest on the belly just to feel the rising and falling of the abdomen. And the specificity of these sensations is very important. So we're going to use a word in the mind. The definition of the word is this precise sensation in this precise moment. Completely unique and never to be noticed or found again. Each time we have contact with that in the mind, we can describe it by using the word this. Very precisely, this sensation in this moment. So in the mind, it might sound something like this, this, this. Only using the word when we have that exact contact. The game is that the only thing for us that matters in this moment is this. of course, what we sometimes call distractions may arise. In other words, the millions of things which are not this. So if something else arises that is not this, a sound or a different sensation, a thought, a plan, an impulse, in the mind we can simply label that not this. So our world has been divided into two entities, this and not this. And now we enter the deeply simple and deeply profound game. And we're looking for continuity of contact with this. Anytime we lose that continuous connection, it's some form of not this. Remembering that it's not bad, it's not a problem, it's simply not this. But one key is even when we use the phrase not this, that second word in that phrase is very specific. We're pulled away to a distraction. We begin to label it. It is not. And then we let the mind find precisely what it is not. It's not this. Rarely is our life so simple. simply the sensations of our home base, the breath or the hands or whatever we've chosen. And everything else. And everything else keeps pointing right back to this. Being sure that if we're assessing, imagining that this is good or terrible, if we're preferring, we notice the mind preferring this versus not this. If there's a self arising, it seems like the one in charge. All of these are examples of not this. So being sure we're not fighting, setting these two categories as opposites. There's this and everything else in the world pointing right back to this. And to be sure that we're allowing the mind to do this in the most relaxed way possible. For a moment, let's let go of any meditation technique. Let's open to all of not this. Our overall whole experience. Whatever is easy to detect in this moment. All together. Noticing if efforting went down as we let go of the technique. If that's the case, it's possible we were over-efforting, if even just slightly. So how gently how subtly can we find this once more and continuing the process without so much efforting, letting the mind know this, letting the mind label not this. Perhaps recognizing that over-efforting, trying to force our mind into a shape is another example of not this, not a problem, simply not this. And for a moment, again, letting go of any particular technique. Seeing if, with the lightness of the mind we've been cultivating, we can connect with the aspect of our experience that at this moment is well, is okay. Some parts of our mind or experience may be agitated or annoyed, but we don't have to attend to these. We can find attuned to our general experience of peace or calm. Any softness. Any ease in our experience. Perhaps there's even somewhere some subtle joy. Remembering none of these need to be overpowering or even predominant. Much of meditation is exploring, observing, cultivating that which is not predominant, that which is subtle. And we can categorize all of these as well-being. So noticing this well-being wherever it might arise, even if other sensations arise that feel contradictory. Staying with the practice, staying in stillness, allowing a tiny bit of light to enter the eyes, eventually allowing the eyes to rest on a single point. As they fully open, knowing that this is the most important moment of the meditation. This is what we've been working towards. Noticing that the mind can still separate the world into small pieces and an overall experience into this and not this. And within this we can also find qualities of this well-being. Calm, quiet, perhaps joy, in subtle ways. So letting this moment be the great teacher that shows us how we might bring this practice into every aspect of our life. Okay, so here comes the fun part, maybe one of the most significant parts of the meditation. This is where you use your digits, your digital technology, and type out beep up, beep up, what happened in that meditation. This will concretize, this will solidify your experience, this will help the mind and system orient, because we have this sort of very personal experience, and then bringing it into the outside actually helps these things align and helps the system recall in a more conscious way what happened, and bring that back to consciousness when it wants to, a little bit more easily. And then if anyone wants to jump on the voice Discord, we can do that too. No problem. Let's see here, feel. Voice Discord, I'm going to get this link ready, and we'll go from there. Here we are. If you want to jump on, you can feel free to jump on and we can chat. I can hear more about your experience and give you a more detailed answer than I could if we were just typing. Okay, so just before we, let's see, the wellspring within, there's a couple of just be cases. General feeling of letting go, finding inner peace. Lovely. Zen Mind says, that's called neti. I don't know. I'm not familiar with that term. I'll have to look it up. Maybe I've heard it and I just don't recall. Let's see here. I always say, let's see here, and sometimes I wonder if I've got that locked in from saying see here, feel. Oh, that's lovely. Oh, that is right. Somebody had talked about this, neti. Neither this nor that. The Upanishad. Everything that is not Atman. Yeah, no, I mean, basically, it's a formulation that I found that the mind, because it tends to see the world in terms of contrasts, I found that using that tendency of the mind to like break the world down into like basically it's always this and not this, to allow the system to use that to its advantage. So what was that like? How did that work for you? This is one of those practices that, if used extensively, will start to make our entire experience feels like it's pointing directly towards the meditation object, really shaping the mind. Because typically we don't see a distraction as being very much related to the object of meditation. So there's the object of meditation, and then there's like a sound or a thing or whatever else is not that, but we don't see that there's a relationship between those two, because the mind can divide the world in any way that it wants. So there's that sensation, and this stuff is pulling me away. Well, what is it pulling you from? I think that's a really good question. Like, what is it distracting you from? And so by framing it in that way, okay, this sound or whatever is distracting me from what? It's distracting me from this. And it's a way to train the system to start to see distraction as actually a pointer back to the object of meditation. Very powerful. Very powerful. Thank you, Zen Mind, for that. I have to look that up, because I actually use that term many times, and I've used it as a way to help show people. I think that's one of the ways I lead people in to understand and have experiences with emptiness, is to really, really know not this, and start to know that the mind can connect with not this for any object. So you can go through and this might actually, maybe this is exactly what the neti is. You can do that with every single object, every single. Actually, this might make sense, but it's just funny that it says, this is pointing people to Atman, because partially this is, well, interesting. This is maybe true, because they talk about Atman as being true self, and I actually, there's a good correlation here. Thank you for that. So, oh my goodness, thank you for the DC Susan. Well, Denny, thank you so much for gifting DC Susan with oh my God, Nick just subscribed. Welcome back, Nick. Great to see you here. Folks are subscribing left and right. Very kind. I always appreciate people gifting subscriptions. It's just super sweet. And I don't know, this whole video game meditation world is weird, but I always think it's so sweet, people to gift each other subscriptions. So thank you. Welcome, DC Susan. Lovely to have you here. Thank you, Denny, so much for the gift subscription. That means for the next month you can do this without commercials, which trust me, I wish that we could do this without commercials forever, but I don't have the infrastructure to pay for an entire live streaming system. So if I did, we could just skip this entirely, do our own thing. Okay, so the point is that we can observe any object as in a way, this sounds very weird, but this is actually points exactly to what you're pointing to, Zen Mind. And this is in when they talk about emptiness and Zen, this is, from my perspective, this is what we're talking about. Objects have a thisness to it. It's this object. It's very clear. It's not confusing. It is this. It's very clearly an object. The objectiness of this points to, if we let the mind cultivate in this way, is to non-object, no thing, no. There is no thing. There's no solid way of organizing reality, in part because all things experientially are just made by the mind. For instance, here's two beat-up dog toys that I happen to have here that I took away from the dog because they're making noise during the meditation. These two objects have no knowledge that they are separate. There's the understanding that these two are two different experiences or two different things, or they would operate as autonomously in the world, is 100% happening in the mind, because these two things they have no understanding that they are separate. We think they're separate, but that is the mind doing that. The separation is fully based on our relative, perceptual experience. So maybe that's a little far afield for what we're talking about, but hopefully that's helpful. Nick has a comment here. Very excited to hear Nick's comment. Nick is our oldest subscriber, longest time subscriber here on the channel. So thank you, Nick. And we'll go, oops, I just highlighted everything. And Nick says,
that was a sleek, well thought out meditation. Don't feel like reporting, but will say that adding a pause in not this was very helpful. Used to do a rather clunky not this label and then go to this. But just going not pause, this is much more elegant.
Yeah, I'm trying. So this formulation, I'm trying to get it really clear in my language and how I describe it, and I'm getting closer. But even, Denny, who's been here for a while, and I've used this a number of times, I think it was the last stream, I clarified it enough that it was clear for Denny that whenever you use the term "not this," don't use it generically. Oh, not this, not this, not this. It's a very hyper-specific term. It's not something very specific. It's not what? Not this. And ideally, when I'm guiding the meditation, if you ever hear me use that word, use the word "this," I'm actually in contact with this. I don't like saying it unless I'm actually in contact with it, just out of respect for its own definition. So that's what I try to do when things work well. Okay, Julia says the following.
In the beginning, distractions hardly pulled me in. Some dullness, but my body seemed to deal with it on its own by yawning a lot. In the middle, I actually had to increase my effort slightly because dullness got stronger. When we switched to well-being, suddenly lots of negative emotion popped up, but I did find parts that were okay.
Good.
The negative emotions flared up again at the letting this moment be the great teacher moment, with some resistance to that. Quite relaxed now, though.
Great. So what it sounds like is this, again, this is the rule of contrast. The mind is noticing the opposite. If I say, only look at my hand that's moving, right? It's like at first the mind will do it because it's probably a little more predominant, but eventually the mind just goes, yeah, but I can only tell that's moving because of all the other things. The mind is observing things via contrast. And so this is very common, and it's not a problem, actually. I want to make this clear, that if I'm saying, hey, let's observe things that feel like they're general wellness, and the mind says, but what about all this stuff that's not well, or is problematic, or that hurts, or these kind of things, usually we experience that as a problem, but actually we want to just see it as the nature of the mind, and not to view, okay, the mind is sticky in this way or that way as a problem. We just say, oh, it's nature. We observe these things as nature. They're not problems. So your meditation report sounds like that's just what was happening, and so you want to treat that as natural. Now today we're focusing, again, it's just a matter of this and not this. Today we're focusing on X, and then the whole rest of the alphabet, A through Z, except for X, was sort of outside or a distraction. We could just flip that just as easily and say, let's just attend to parts that the mind reads as negative, right? It says this is bad or this is bad. We can just observe those, and that's fine. And what will typically happen is if the mind is in a very contrasty place, it'll just show us, like, I'm just looking for the negative thoughts, and it'll just show us all the neutral and thoughts that it's reading as positive. I use big bunny quotes here because it's helpful to know that experientially there are no, and this is in Buddhist theory, which again, I'm not a strict Buddhist, but there is no such thing as a negative thought or emotion or even action. There are skillful and unskillful. There are pleasant and unpleasant. Yes, the mind reads things as being good or bad, but are they inherently good or bad, or is it just in that moment the mind is reading it that way? So it can be helpful to actually observe, oh, look, the system is reading these things as negative or not negative. Worth having a little fun and exploring, powerful and transformative if we can really see the sort of neutral nature of our experiencing. Okay, hopefully that helps. Great report. Thank you for that clarity. Denny now says,
that was a very relaxing meditation. I saw how fast and easy it was for the mind to get pulled away from this, with the most clarity I've had so far.
Great.
Towards the end of the meditation, I felt a great sense of tranquility and unity. Despite my sore hips constantly pulling my attention away, the tranquility and unity wasn't gone. Unlike other sensations that are more transient.
Great. That's great. And that's, again, that's like, I'm not saying that's great because, hey, good thing you had those nice unitive experiences and that tranquility. You just noticed what was happening. Fantastic. And P.S. I've had very, very intense sore hips in the past and low flexibility in the hips, and yin yoga for hips is the killer. It's the best. And I also work with an acupuncturist, a trigger point acupuncturist who helped work that out. Okay, Jean now says,
Janusz, I wonder if you have any additional comments about expanding something by focusing on it, whether it be gratitude or well-being. I have been pondering this since the inauguration day, and for some reason I was feeling crabby, like I wanted to put on goth makeup and sulk. I tried not to give in to it because I didn't want to give it attention, but sulking like a teenager can be fun. I really liked the meditation itself today, but on my side was a bit unfocused. I feel busy today.
No problem. And that's, I mean, it's a cultivation. It's a cultivation over time. So not surprising that at times, even if we know exactly what we want to be doing in the meditation, the mind is doing something else. It's better to recognize what it is doing and then work within that than to fight it and be like, oh no, I'm supposed to feel like X or Y at any given point. Let's see. What was your first question? Oh yeah. So basically there is a whole category of meditation where we either produce something that the system reads as positive. I'm using bunny quotes because it is true. The system reads certain things as positive or more pleasant, or maybe more morally, in line with what is important to us, like helping somebody up the stairs with a baby carriage, or, just noticing the parts of our body that feel easeful is what we did today. And that entire field, it's probably like half of the entire meditation system, is called nurture positive. Nurture positive is simply anytime we consider that there's any possibility of something good or better or worthwhile pursuing, and we just attend to that till the system starts attending to it more and more easily. I'm trying to think of like a very common example. So you'll notice that if, I don't know if you guys have this experience, but if someone's alarm on their phone goes off, or their ringtone, and it's your like your morning wake-up alarm. I don't know if anyone uses their phone for their wake-up alarm. I'm trying to phase out of that. But if you do that, the system's like, and like lights up and is like, alarms ringing, even though it's like the middle of the day. It's like, whoa. So the system has trained itself to recognize that sound to mean like give you a hit of adrenaline and sort of wake you up. In the same way, we can condition ourselves that whenever we get up, it means meditation time, or whenever we see the color red, we take a few moments to consider the people we love. Like, these are sort of obscure examples, but morning means coffee, like any of these simple habits. So forming a habit, moving towards any kind of goodness or whatever we read as good, is all an example of this. The ancient, or the traditional term for this is sila, S-I-L-A. You'll notice that our dog is also named that, and yeah, that is what sila is. It's cultivating the wholesome side of our experience over and over again. You can do that. It's just a matter of just like building a muscle. Denny says,
"Oh, acupuncture is fantastic. Had to stop for COVID distancing, but am considering starting again."
Well, I mean, I would say it's worth pausing for now. Do stretches and do, whatever you need to. I got one of those like brutal massage guns, which are really great. And just, trust me, it's not nearly worth it. Never tried yin yoga, but I've noticed that Qigong helps. Qigong's wonderful, and Qigong, there's a close relationship between Qigong and Yin, in my experience. Is metta nurture positive? Absolutely. Metta is nurture positive. In fact, there's this weird thing that we treat these two as very different. At first, the way they talk about it to some degree, that there's two sides of the path. There's the transcendent side, and then there's the sort of the doing side, or rather, sorry, the non-doing side, the transcendent, side, and then there's the doing side, where everything from like, taking a shower to helping somebody up the stairs with their baby carriage to like metta and loving kindness, and we see them as different. But the only reason they're different is because we count the doing as something else, that it's a different category. It's the same way that, if a beaver makes a dam, that's nature. But if a human makes a dam, that's unnature. Somehow that's unnatural. It's this idea that somehow the doing of the thumb, the opposable digit thumb actions of humans is somehow special and different. So this whole side of the path, the doing side, is somehow different from the transcendent side, or the transcendent is different from the doing side. As you develop in the path, and you really develop the two of these, they end up colliding again at the end, and you realize, oh, they were the same thing the whole time. Because you can't do a meditation of any kind, really, without some degree of a sila or nurture positive. You have to sit down, you have to try over and over again all of these things. So each of these is a form of nurture positive. And we say, nurture positive instead of like heart practice, because anything that is any movement towards any kind of goodness is nurture positive. Hopefully that's clear enough. Sila, exactly, little pup. She's not here. Actually, she's at Raquel's office. Acupressure mats also help. I've wondered about those because they're just like a mat with spikes. I'm curious if folks have had good experience with acupressure. Let's see. Exalted asks.
Sorry if this sounds morbid, but what's the point of nurturing positive if everything is ultimately the same and empty? One taste.
That's great. So what I thought you were going to say, which I think is like, it's the same answer. What's the point of nurture positive if everyone's going to die? The answer to that question would be like, well, somebody says, what's the point of like being nice to like a little kid if ultimately we're all going to die? It's like, well, because there's different scales. And we experience the world in these different scales. And yes, it is true that we can experience the world in this ultimate sort of way, but that's not the way we all experience it. That's one facet. Now that facet does contain and interact with all the other parts, but it doesn't negate them and negate the experience of them. In other words, it's like, why... this is what the sand mandala is about. Why create a sand mandala, a beautiful map of how to awaken, and then sweep it away? Like, why would you do that? Well, part of the point is actually recognizing that they are actually linked. Sweeping away the mandala is part of the path. Creating the mandala and then letting it go is part of the path. So nurture positive is actually is emptiness. There is emptiness in nurture positive, and so there's no difference. So if there is no difference, then what should we choose? Just sit on the couch and let ourselves rot away? Well, that's fine if we feel like in this relative frame, we think that is, that would create the most, reduce suffering the most for myself and for other people. That is definitely an option. And there is the sense that there is a goodness, there is a wholesomeness in reducing the suffering for ourselves and for other people, that there is something about that absolutely within a relative experience makes lives better. So another way to say it is like, we're talking about relative improvement, meaning improvement that is not like transcendent, right? Transcendence is just empty. There's nothing, there's no movement to make, there's nothing to do. On a relative scale, there is things to do, like we may bake the bread and feed the hungry, etc. There are these things to do. So why do the relative thing when there is such an idea as ultimate thing? It's about scale and context. So within one context, it makes sense. In the other context, it makes less sense. But often what happens, especially earlier on, when I talked about these two developments that come back together, early on, if you apply the rules of the ultimate to the relative, all these terrible things happen. If you apply the rules of the relative to the ultimate, all this like weird stuff goes down. So, an example, applying the ultimate to the relative. Someone says, hey, I was treated really terribly by someone in our meditation community. They did something totally unethical. Well, from the ultimate perspective, I could say, well, ultimately, we're all just dust in the wind, so no big deal, see you later, right? It's applying the rules of the ultimate to the relative. It's not going to work out well. It's going to be, excuse me, very problematic. The other way around is the rules of the relative, meaning growth and advancement and development and, trying to be a better person. Well, you should have this kind of awakening. You should experience it like this because that's how it's supposed to be, and you should do this only for moral reasons, and that's all there is to it in the ultimate category. I've got a frog in my throat. The problem with that is that it just contradicts the sort of nature of ultimate, of the transcendent material. It's always going to push against that. So we have to at first be able to navigate the two seemingly separately, and at some point there's this recognition that, the two are very, very much linked. So I don't know if that's a satisfying answer. Hopefully that does make some sense. That's how I navigate that. That's how I sleep at night. Denny, also known as Black Skulls, says,
Nagarjuna's two truths concept really helped me with the why does XYZ matter if everything is empty thoughts.
Yeah. So that's exactly it. We're talking about the two truths. That is the exact concept that we're referring to here. Exactly. Exalted says, more on the same, which is helpful. More clarity. Exalted says,
but at some point, that emptiness permanently becomes the only facet you have, right? So at that point, nurture positive makes no difference for you. Helping other people is still good, of course.
experientially, absolutely. But the thing is that we always return, no matter how empty and how, no matter how deep the cessation, we return to the experience of a relative world. And so, yes, that is true, but this is where the term that form is emptiness and emptiness is form. Form is empty. It is not inherently, there's like a beingness, or how do we say, like the solidity and like the hardness of objects is not a real thing, at least how the mind experiences. I'm not saying there is no matter that exists, but objects don't exist in that way. And the reason that's important is that we negotiate the world as a bunch of objects. It's me versus you, and we've got to fight, and there's all these challenges. So that's not actually true, and that's a fact. And in the relative sense, it is very important to do. An example is, you go to the grocery store in New York. We call them bodegas. I think it's a Spanish word. If someone knows what the actual translation of the word bodega means, I'm curious, because I forgot about that. It means something really simple. I think it's like a house of a cat. I think that's what bodega translates to. If you're from New York, you'll get that joke. So is that, so you go to the local grocery store and you say, hey man, everything is ultimate. There's no such thing, all this like relative value and stuff. It's not real, man. So I want this bread and I don't have any money. It's like, sorry, that doesn't work in this context. Someone's going to say, you need to give me money. If you take that money and then say, you go to another universe, another galaxy, and say, hey, I got all this money, I really want that bread, right? They're going to say, no, sorry, in this context, that relative system doesn't work. Forget another universe, go to, another country. And they say, sorry, we can't help you. So that relationship between relative and ultimate is always being negotiated. I think a lot of our problem in society and difficulties and delusion, etc., is we take the relative, that imagined value set, and say it is the ultimate. It is reality. And you turn capitalism into God, and then suddenly the level of internal and external violence is like stunning. So hopefully that clarifies even a little bit. Julia says,
my own what's the point ing seems to be rooted in suffering and selfing. So maybe motivation is part of the system's nature.
Help clarify that for me, Julia. I want to understand what you just said. So for you, the what's the point is related to suffering and selfing. Help me understand that, because I feel like I could give something more, but you like Shinzen's Appreciate, Transcend, Improve video. Oh yeah, it's a great video. If you want to post a link for that, that would be great. But first, tell me what you mean. Help me clarify what you mean, because I feel like I could give a little bit more. I could give you a little bit more. Exalted says, thanks for the suggestion, by the way, guys. Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Bodega equals storeroom or wine cellar. Interesting. It's not cat house. Scott Nesbin, good to see you. I haven't seen you in a little while. Hey, you should do another Zoom retreat sometime. Oh, okay. You guys are killing me. Keep reminding me, but, I feel bad every time. I'm like, oh, another retreat. A lot of what it is, okay, why am I so hesitant to, do retreats? I just want to tell you guys, I'm so busy right now. Right now, okay, this is how busy I am, and don't worry, but this is still, how busy I am. There's a general pressure of people like, maybe the live stream should go or get reduced, or something should change, because I have so much going on right now, and it's like I really like doing the live stream though, so that's a lot of what it is. So then a retreat is like this big chunk of time, a lot of organization, etc. Okay, so Julia says, if you remove suffering, motivation might remain or arise more. It is true, it is a fact that if suffering goes down, or if self-consciousness, for instance, as one form of suffering goes down, I've had this experience, you can become way less motivated to do anything. It's just why would I do a thing? I don't care if people judge me or not for not doing it. It's not a big motivation for me. So part of the path is finding other motivations that are not just, that are not driven by, how people think about us, which is a hard thing to do. And what people find sometimes is they want to be just as motivated, they want to be just as driven as when they were like really worried about what everyone thought of them, but suddenly that motivation is gone and they're sort of like, nah, I kind of want to do nothing. Like, this is totally perfectly just as pleasant to like not do a thing than it is to do the thing. So part of it is to find a deeper motivation. This is why I talk about values all the time. Something deeper than I'm worried about what people think about me, more of an intrinsic, there's part of me that really does want this, and to attend to and cultivate that part if we want that thing to happen. So for me, making artwork was very much in a way like I wanted to like make a point in art history, and I wanted to like change the world in this very particular way and for this very particular sort of set of people and in this very specific construct. And it was silly. It was weird. And when I stopped caring about that particular group of people, I just stopped being motivated to make artwork. And so now it's like less interesting because I'm less like, less this sense of mastery and less this need for like being a master, wanting to be an expert is a very externally focused thing. I heard a good teacher say this once a long time ago, that wanting to be an expert is a form of like narcissism, like it's wanting to be seen as that, whereas wanting to be helpful is a very different vibe, and that's why I focus a lot on trying to be helpful rather than like trying to be considered the great expert. I don't know if people notice this, but like I do, as much as I can interact with other communities and interact, online, etc. And I try not to. I could just shape myself as being an expert and be like, hey, I'm the authority, and if you listen to me, you're going to get the right answer. And that actually helps you get students. It helps you get people, and people pay attention. You say, especially useful in that formulation is to shit talk other people, is to say, well, yes, you mentioned XY teacher. Well, some people get a lot out of what they're doing, but if you're really going to have an advanced practice, if you really want an advanced practice, you need to, this and not this is the true thing, and this is why, and it's like very common. And for people who are who want that kind of, a lot of people do want that kind of assuredness and clarity. They just gravitate towards those people. People's entire giant careers are made out of that kind of like, oh, dismissive, mine is the one true authority. And I just don't, it's just not my thing. I'm just not into it. So I don't know if that helps clarify, but that's part of why I'm sort of like, I just exist, no big deal. See if I can be helpful. Because it just, I don't jive with that so much right now in my life. Maybe one day I will, and I'll see the need for it. Okay, Julia says, okay, right. Jean says, is there a way to do Zoom retreat with less admin work? I think actually what I need to do more is get help with the admin work, because I do it pretty minimally, and I think part of what it is just getting help. The other thing is I'm like the Zoom retreat has to be free or has to be whatever, so it's like we're paying for someone to do the admin work, and it's just a loss, so it ends up being a little bit of a, is what it is kind of thing. Denny here says,
that's the one issue I had with The Path to Nibbana by David Johnson. He spends like the first 25% of the book doing that, despite the teachings being extremely useful for me.
And then you say, the appeal of the Buddha fallacy. The appeal to the Buddha fallacy. Yeah. So I want to give some like, this is my negative feedback. So you can take this with a grain of salt, because I'm doing to some degree the thing that I'm describing other people do. But you'll actually see this in most teachers. I'm sure I do it as well. But there's the way Shinzen describes it, I think this is really brilliant, is you describe the parts of your practice that are, the sort of innate positives of your practice and the innate negatives of other people's practices and techniques. You just do that enough and people think, oh, your practice must be the best, but everybody does that. Here's the innate, here's the thing that is like innately bad about theirs, here's the thing that's innately good about mine, and therefore we're good, like mine must be the best. But they don't recognize that, like anything, there are innate positives and negatives of every type of practice. Every type of practice has its own positives and negatives. So rarely can they talk about the negatives of their practice and the positives of somebody else's practice. And that's a good sign of somebody who can, who I trust, basically, is if they can talk about, like, okay, here's the things about my practice that are problematic or difficult or challenging, and here's the parts of other people's practices that are, great and excellent, and reasons why you should study with this person. I try to do that. I don't know how well I manage, but there we go. Julia says, maybe clarifying.
I used to be driven, worried, but over time that just petered out, long before I started meditating, I think because of dissatisfactoriness, hedonic adaptation, but I'm not sure.
Totally. That makes perfect sense. Yeah, the hedonic treadmill's quite a, it's like once you actually experience it and realize how awful it is. I mean, I use the phone as the example all the time. I'm like, I gotta get this new phone, this new object, this thing, I gotta get it. And then you get it, and it's like, how many seconds into owning this thing is it that it feels like, oh, God, that was not what I wanted? And I think part of what it is that there's something about wanting that feels good. It's like, oh, I want it. And we think that the getting on the other end is going to feel very good because it seems to increase the closer we get, but it never stops. It's just the wanting is always this, like, reaching out, wanting, like, and it's actually really agonizing. That's something that's been coming up in the psychedelic journeys, is that the system is just like craving and wanting all the time. It just never stops craving and wanting. Even like existing is this way of like, I exist, like trying to constantly like be the self and be in the world and manage. It's like, it's not, it's less than ideal. Let's see here. Denny now says,
there should be a personality quiz that match you with your most compatible meditation techniques.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, honestly, the new company we're trying to build is like an algorithm that will guide you towards the way of meditating that's going to be really important for you. But I don't know. That's going to be I think it's very specific. So that's the challenge. Folks, okay. Lovely is all. Oh, wait, I just remembered something. I just remembered a dream, because it's related to what I'm about to say. I had a dream that people on the stream, all of you, were complaining and saying, we hate when you do the wish at the end. We don't like it. We wish you never did that because it really just annoys us and drives us crazy, which I think is very funny, because I feel like I have no idea how people feel, but I don't get complaints about it. But it's funny that some part of my mind was concerned, or like a character in my mind was like using that as a proxy for like various inner outer like challenges. So I think that was last night I dreamt that people were like, no, we don't like the outro where you do a wish for us. So good times. So that's what's coming up, folks. Folks, so great to be here with you. We're going to be back here in fewer than 48 hours. Good times for all. And we're going to be meditating this Wednesday. Going to have a good time, talk about it, hang out. Always fun. And what was I going to say? Okay, so a wish for you in this particular moment. So today, what did we do? We did this and not this, and then we talked about well-being as one way to experience the world. So right now, let's do the opposite, because it helps, right? Look at all the aspects of our experience, every sensory experience that's just bad. It's awful. Look at how awful all of our experience is. So this is a little mind trick we can do. All of this is terrible. This is terrible. The effect that's having on me is actually the part of me that's like, yeah, it's terrible, sort of like actually perking up. So maybe that's not the best idea. So let's do this. Notice the aspects of this that are terrible versus the aspects of this, all of our experience that are neutral versus the aspects of this which are actually quite pleasant and supportive. I often find the neutral quite pleasant and supportive. So maybe that's the way to go. Neutral, supportive on one side, and terrible on the other. What's coming up from me in this moment is that part that's like negative, terrible. It is present, and it wants to take over, and it wants to say everything is blah, doesn't work. Interestingly, that part is just kind of loud right now. So in your current experience, just taking that in and using your sense memory, what we develop every time we meditate, to connect with that part that has some awareness of that well-being. And we can choose in this moment which one we prefer, which one feels better. The part that's like, no, this is bad, or this doesn't work, or is annoyed or frustrated, or that part that finds wellness in any one of our experiences, the peace or quiet or neutrality. And we probably prefer one thing, but letting the system choose, letting the body and mind just pick which one feels like you'd rather spend time with that. And this is part of how we teach our system, is just giving it the option, letting it choose, and it recognizing which one is the preference is often a good way to train the system. Julia says, can the Chuladasa thing teach us anything about our practice? Well, that's a great question, Julia. Let's talk about that next time. You remind me of that question. I'll try to make a note, but if I miss it, I want to answer that question. Can the Chuladasa thing teach us about our practice? The answer is absolutely. Absolutely. So folks, as always, practice well, take care of each other, have fun, and we will see you all very, very soon. Have a lovely day, folks. Bye-bye.